Did you know that the day Moses died, God himself was shaken to his very core? What did Moses do to shake the Almighty God like this? Did he die a horrible, painful death, or was it something else? Stick around until the end of this video, where we reveal what really happened and why God was so moved by his death. This is the story of Moses, the leader of the Israelites who led his people out of slavery in Egypt to freedom in the Promised Land. It's an epic tale filled with miracles, hardship, and above all, unwavering faith. But have you ever wondered what truly happened when Moses breathed his last breath? Join us as we unravel the haunting consequences of Moses' death, a story that will leave you questioning the depths of faith, the weight of legacy, and the profound impact one man can have on the course of history. Are you ready to embark on this spiritual journey with us? Then let's begin. The death of Moses, the great prophet and leader of the Israelites, is a pivotal moment in the biblical narrative. His passing marked the end of an era, a time when God spoke directly to a human being and guided them in their journey towards the Promised Land. But what really happened after his death? How did it affect the Israelites and the divine order? Let's dive deep into the scriptures and find out. After leading the Israelites for 40 years in the wilderness, God informed Moses that he would soon pass away. At the age of 80, Moses was to ascend Mount Nebo, located in the region of Moab, where he would see the Promised Land from afar, but would not be allowed to enter. This directive came from God himself, who instructed Moses to appoint Joshua as his successor. The reason behind this decision was God's anger towards Moses for not fully trusting him during the Meribah incident, where they quarreled over the lack of water. As a result, Moses' wife Zipporah gave birth to their son Gershom, and he himself was forbidden from entering Canaan. Upon reaching the summit of Mount Nebo, Moses spread his staff and dipped it into the waters. Miraculously, the waters split just as they had before. And Moses, along with the leaders of Israel, crossed the Jordan River to view the land they were about to inherit. It was a breathtaking sight, fertile and beautiful, just as God had promised. However, as they descended the mountain, Moses knew his time was short, and he began to bless his people, imparting words of wisdom and faith that would guide them in their future endeavors. These blessings are recorded in Deuteronomy, chapters 32 to 33, where Moses prophetically speaks of the challenges and triumphs that await the Israelites as they settle in the Promised Land. He reminds them to remain faithful to God, warning them against idolatry and disobedience. Yet he also prophesies their future victories, assuring them of God's continued presence and protection. As the appointed time drew near, Moses called his people together for one final address. In Deuteronomy chapter 34, he reminds them of their journey from slavery in Egypt to their current position on the brink of a new life in Canaan. He recounts the hardships they have faced, the victories they have won, and most importantly, the covenant they have with God. Moses' vision extends beyond his own lifetime. He knows that his death will not be the end of their story. Instead, it's a transition to a new chapter under the leadership of Joshua. He encourages them to choose life by adhering to God's laws and commands, promising them happiness and long life if they obey. However, he also warns of the consequences of disobedience, stating that they will face God's anger and his curses. With these words of guidance and warning, Moses concluded his earthly ministry. He then ascended Mount Nebo, where God took him up in a chariot of fire and clouds, carrying him to heaven. His body was never recovered, leaving behind a legacy of faith and anticipation. For the Israelites, the death of Moses was a profound moment, marking the end of a significant period in their history. They had known no other leader than Moses, who had been with them through their most desperate moments in Egypt and their entire journey in the wilderness. Now they were about to enter a new phase, one without his physical presence to guide them. There was a sense of loss, of uncertainty, and perhaps even fear among the people as they prepared to move forward. However, there was also gratitude for the life and teachings of Moses. They remembered his courage in confronting Pharaoh, his unwavering faith in God's promises, and his ability to lead them through the hardships of the wilderness. The task of leading the Israelites now fell to Joshua, a man whom Moses had himself trained and chosen as his successor. It was a heavy responsibility, and Joshua must have felt the weight of his people's expectations and God's commands upon him. Yet he was not alone. The spirit of Moses, his wisdom and his connection to God, would continue to be a source of strength for Joshua and the Israelites as they faced the challenges of conquering the promised land. The death of Moses was not the end of his story, nor was it the end of the story of the Israelites. It was a transition, a passing of the torch from one generation to the next, from one leader to the next. It was a reminder of God's faithfulness and his plans for his people. Even in the midst of grief and uncertainty, the Israelites could look ahead with hope, knowing that they were part of a larger divine narrative. However, the death of Moses had far-reaching implications that extended beyond the immediate circumstances. In Numbers, chapter 27, we find another significant event that unfolded after Moses' death, the daughters of Zelophehad. Who were they? They were the 5 daughters of a man named Zelophehad, who belonged to the tribe of Manasseh. Their father died during the rebellion in Meribah, and since he had no sons, his daughters needed to ensure their inheritance. At that time, Jewish law did not allow women to inherit property, so they went to Moses and the other leaders and asked for a remedy. Their request caught the attention of God, who commanded Moses to grant them an inheritance among their father's relatives. This episode holds particular significance for women in ancient times. It showcases an instance where they took initiative, stood up for their rights, and received a favorable outcome. Moreover, it reflects a shift in perspective regarding women's roles and inheritance, a progressive step in a society that often limited their rights. It demonstrates that even in the midst of change and uncertainty, like the death of Moses, there is room for justice and equality. But wait, we still haven't answered the question, why did God let Moses die? And how did this affect the Israelites? To understand why God allowed Moses to die, we must consider the context of his life and mission. Moses was not an ordinary man. He was a prophet, a leader, and a conduit between God and the Israelites. From the time he was called by God while tending sheep in the wilderness to the moment he led his people out of slavery in Egypt, Moses walked a path illuminated by divine purpose. He delivered the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, guiding the Israelites towards a covenant with God. He performed miracles, parted the Red Sea, and provided for his people in the wilderness. Throughout his journey, Moses exhibited unwavering faith, courage, and a deep connection with God. However, Moses was also human. He had strengths, but also weaknesses, moments of greatness, but also times of doubt and struggle. In Exodus, chapter 32, we witness a pivotal moment in Moses' life. While he was on Mount Sinai receiving the 10 Commandments, the Israelites grew impatient and turned to worshiping a golden calf. When Moses returned and saw their idolatry, he broke the commandments and cried out in anguish. In that moment, he grappled with the reality of human fallibility and the consequences of sin. Yet he also displayed remarkable faith and determination. He interceded on behalf of the Israelites, asking God for forgiveness. And he rebuilt the altar and renewed the covenant with God. This episode reveals a profound truth about Moses, his humanity, and his extraordinary faith. It shows that he was not perfect, yet his flaws did not diminish his divine calling. So why did God allow Moses to die? Perhaps it was because in his death, God saw an opportunity to demonstrate even more of his glory. You see, when Moses died, God did something extraordinary. He placed him in a special kind of tomb. In Deuteronomy, chapter 34, we read that when Moses died, his eyes remained open. This might seem like a macabre detail, but it holds a deeper meaning. Moses' death was not a time of decay and darkness, but a moment of heightened awareness and connection with God. His eyes being open symbolize his alertness, his readiness, and his unwavering focus on the divine. It was as if Moses, even in death, was still serving God and fulfilling his purpose. This detail serves as a powerful reminder of the unique relationship between Moses and God. It transcends the typical human experience of death and points to a realm where faith and divinity converge. Moreover, Moses' death had a profound effect on the Israelites. It was not merely a physical passing, but a spiritual and emotional upheaval. They had been with Moses for 40 years, witnessing his miracles, his leadership, and his unwavering commitment to their welfare. His death left a void, a sense of loss that went beyond the absence of a leader. It was the death of a father figure, a spiritual guide, and a symbol of their liberation and hope. In the face of this loss, the Israelites could have easily succumbed to despair, fear, and division. Yet they persevered. They mourned the loss of Moses, acknowledged their grief, and continued their journey under the leadership of Joshua. They carried with them the lessons Moses had taught them, the commandments he had given them, and the faith that had sustained them through the wilderness. In conclusion, the death of Moses was a pivotal moment in the history of the Israelites. It marked the end of an era, the passing of a torch, and the beginning of a new chapter. Moses, the great prophet and leader, died on Mount Nebo, having completed his earthly mission. His death was not the end of his story, nor was it the end of the story of the Israelites. It was a transition, a reminder of God's faithfulness and his plans for his people. Moses' death was a testament to his humanity and his extraordinary faith. In his struggle with God over the golden calf, Moses revealed his flaws and his unwavering commitment to God. His death, with its haunting detail of open eyes, pointed to a realm where faith and divinity converge. Most significantly, Moses' death affected the Israelites profoundly. It was a time of immense loss, yet they persevered, carrying forward the legacy of faith and obedience that Moses had instilled in them. In the face of adversity, they moved forward, knowing that their journey was guided by a divine purpose and a heritage of unwavering belief in God. Thank you for watching. We invite you to subscribe to our channel, to be a part of our community, and join us on our upcoming adventures.